The generator started at 5:40 inches the morning. It was a low, steady hum that cut through the darkness at the bottom of the Bitterroot Valley. Right after came the radio crackle from somewhere outside the tent, someone on Channel 4 checking in with logistics. I lay still for about 10 seconds. Then I got up. The smoke was already in everything. The Copper Creek fire was 9 miles away, but you could smell it right here at Wolf Creek Spike Camp, the same way you can smell burned coffee grounds if someone left a pot on too long and walked out of the room. Not fresh, not sharp, just old and dry and heavy in the back of the throat. My bandana felt like folded cardboard when I tied it around my neck. Sweat and trail dust had dried into it in layers over 11 days, and by now it had gone stiff and rough against my skin. I joined the MRE line at 6. My eyes were red from the smoke, and I had been blinking more than usual since I woke up. I counted back in my head. 11 days on the fire line total since early June. This was my 4th full season. Last year, the tired came around week 4. This year, it was already here at week 2, and I had not expected it this early. I did not know what that meant. I was not sure I wanted to find out. I had turned 29 at the end of July. Hazel called, but I was in a dead zone with no signal and I missed it. We talked 3 days later for 6 minutes before my phone died. She sang happy birthday badly on purpose, and I laughed, and that was the whole birthday. People on the fire line call those trail birthdays, the ones that happen while you are somewhere else, doing something that will not stop just because the date on the calendar changed. Standing in that line, I thought about the cabin, the one near Lolo, listed at $185,000 at $19.50 an hour plus hazard pay, saving the way I saved each season. I needed 14 more seasons to get there. Not 4. 14. I had been telling myself 4 for so long that the real number felt like it belonged to a different person. And sometimes, standing in lines like this one, I asked myself a question I did not like very much. Did I choose this work because I wanted the cabin, or did I choose it because the work gave me a reason not to go back to any place in particular? Not yet. Maybe not ever. I did not answer it. The line moved forward, and I moved with it. I picked up my MRE, beef stew, and walked to the water table to fill my canteen. A man was standing at the table with his back to me. Yellow Nomex jacket, faded and covered in fine gray dust. Motorola radio clipped to his left shoulder. Standard issue. He turned around. I stopped. 1 second. Maybe a little more. He stopped too. 2 full seconds. I counted them without meaning to. Caleb. He looked the same in the ways that stay the same, and different in all the ways that 7 years will change a person. Same height, same build, more lines on his face, the kind that come from years of squinting at smoke and sky. We were wearing the same faded yellow jacket. We were both carrying the same radio on the same shoulder. I need to put this here, because this is where my mind went when I saw his face. Spring, 7 years ago. I was 22, finishing my last year at the University of Montana. I had bought my first Wildland firefighter hard hat the week before, a bright yellow thing that still smelled like plastic in the bag. Caleb was standing in the parking lot outside my dorm building, holding it in both hands. He said I did not understand what I was choosing. I said he did not understand me. We were both right. That was the whole problem. I went inside. I walked to my window and stood there watching him stand in the parking lot below, the hard hat still in his hands. Cars going by on the street past him. He stayed for 11 minutes. I counted. 2 weeks later, he moved to Boise for a job with BLM. That was the last time we talked in person. His number was still saved in my phone after all this time, under Caleb UM. I had never sent another message. Back at the water table, he said, "Hey, Ren." I said, "Hey." That was it. He told me he was with the Boise BLM crew, Type 2 Initial Attack Team. 14 days on this assignment. I nodded. Then he said something quieter. He said he had seen my name on the assignment board, over by logistics in the IAP binder. He said he had planned to say hello earlier. I did not know what to do with that, so I filled my canteen and looked at the water running over my hand. The water was cold for about 3 seconds. Then it was just water. There was a question I did not say out loud. How long had he stood in front of that board before he decided he was going to say hello earlier? He walked away. I found a bench and sat down with the cold beef stew. Garza sat nearby a few minutes later. He was 38, our lead sawyer, and he had been doing this kind of work since before I started. He looked at me for a moment and asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. That was the first lie of the day. I knew it while I was saying it, and I said it anyway. The morning briefing was in 40 minutes. I had 14 more days on this assignment. I would see Caleb at every meal, every morning rollout, every evening check-in, and sitting there with a cold MRE and smoke-red eyes, I did not know yet who I was going to be by the time those 14 days were done. Halliday, Ray's, comms check, Channel 4. I pressed the side of my radio, loud and clear. His voice came back. Copy that. That was the 3rd time in one morning that we had shared Channel 4. It was also the 3rd time I had noticed something, the way his voice went slightly higher at the word, that. A small thing, the kind of thing you stop hearing after a while with someone, and then you hear it again years later, and it lands. Our 2 crews worked different sections of the line, but we used the same tactical channel all day. I spent 16 hours cutting small trees, digging with my Pulaski to keep the line 2 feet wide, calling out to my crew when I needed them to move. Caleb's crew was on the other branch, maybe half a mile away. I never saw him, but I heard him through the radio several times a day. Reyes, status, Reyes copy, holding. Each time, I noticed his voice, and each time I told myself, that was just what happened when you knew someone well once. Your brain holds on to things. It was not a choice. I did not let myself think about it longer than that. The days had a shape to them that made it easier. Up before 6, briefing at 7, with the whole camp standing around the IAP board outside logistics, on the line by 8. 16 hours of cutting, digging, moving. By 4 in the afternoon, the water in my canteen tasted like warm plastic and Nomex and something faintly oily that I could never fully identify. I drank it anyway. By 6, the ash from the fire had settled into the creases of my hands and turned hard, a thin gray layer over everything. I had learned to rub it off with a little dry sand, work it out of the knuckles before I ate. The work left no room for anything that was not the work. That was part of why I had chosen it, and I knew that, and I did not think about it any more than I thought about Caleb's voice on the radio. After dinner, I walked to the water buffalo to clean up. The water buffalo was a large blue tank on a trailer at the edge of the camp, used for drinking and washing. I had been going there most evenings because it was quiet and away from the noise of the chow tent. Caleb was already at the tank. We talked for 6 minutes. I checked my watch when I got back to my tent. He asked if I was still in Missoula. I said I stayed at Hazel's place between seasons, her futon in the laundry room, though I did not say that part. He said, "How's Hazel doing?" I paused before I answered, because he still remembered her name. 7 years, no contact, and he still had her name. I said Hazel was good. She had 2 kids now. He nodded. Then he said he had a daughter, 8 months old. Her name was Iris. The water was running over my hands, and I turned it off. "Congratulations," I said. I heard my own voice, and it was technically correct. It was the right word, but it was also flat in the middle, the sound of someone saying what they are supposed to say, and nothing else. He said, "Thanks." There was a silence long enough to hear the generator humming across the camp. Then he asked if I had bought that cabin yet. I did not remember telling him about the cabin. That was a thing I had started thinking about in the 2 years after he moved to Boise. There was no way he should have known about it. But he did. He remembered it from somewhere. Some conversation I had forgotten. I said, "Not yet. Getting close." He nodded and did not ask more questions. I walked back to my tent and lay on my cot and went through it. The tent smelled like dried mud and old sunscreen, and the particular staleness of a sleeping bag that has not been aired out since June. I stared at the tent ceiling and listened to 2 people outside talking quietly about tomorrow's sector assignment. He was married. He had a baby daughter named Iris. I did not have the right to feel anything complicated about running into him at this camp. I had been curious about an old story. That was all. It was normal to feel a little off balance when you ran into someone from a long time ago. People felt that way all the time, and it did not mean anything. I told myself this slowly and clearly, like someone reading notes before a test. I knew I was lying to myself. I kept going anyway. I had gotten good at it. The next afternoon, on day 5, a branch came down on the wrong side of Caleb's crew. A 22-year-old named Tate took it on the shoulder. It was not serious. No broken bones. But he could not keep working, and the crew lead called for a UTV to take him back to base camp. I was close enough to help carry him to the vehicle. Caleb climbed in beside Tate for the ride. He put one hand on the young man's shoulder. He just kept it there, steady and easy, not gripping, not moving, just present. The way you do when someone needs to know you are not leaving. I stood at the edge of the trail and watched them drive away. I was looking at the way Caleb held that hand on Tate's shoulder, and I thought, he did not know how to do that 7 years ago. Not because he was a bad person, but because he had not learned it yet. He had not known how to do that when we were in school. He knew now. That night I texted Hazel. She asked why I was calling so late. I did not answer that directly. I just wrote, "Do you remember Caleb?" She did not answer for about 30 seconds. Then, "Where are you?" I wrote back. "Wolf Creek." She wrote, "Oh, honey." That was all she wrote. But with Hazel, that was sometimes enough. I lay on my cot with the camp radio crackling outside and stared at the tent ceiling. I asked myself a question I should not have been asking. If we had another 14 days here, just like these 6, what would I do? And did I even have the right to ask it? I was not sure. I went through both parts of the question and came up with nothing solid, and after a while I closed my eyes and let the radio noise carry me somewhere close to sleep. At 3:30 inches the afternoon on day 9, the wind changed. It had been coming from the northwest all morning, steady and predictable, the kind of wind you factor into your plan and then forget about. Then it swung hard to the southeast. The fire crossed the section of line our crew had finished digging that same morning. The next 40 minutes were loud and fast. The radio did not stop. "Halliday, fall back to anchor point. Copy?" I heard Caleb's voice cut through channel 4, higher than usual. Not quite shouting, but close. "Halliday, where are you?" Status. I could not answer right away. Garza and I had one of the younger crew members between us, a kid who was moving but not fast enough, and I had his arm, and Garza had his pack, and we were pushing hard toward the saddle as quickly as the brush and the slope would let us. When I finally got a hand free to press my radio, I said, "Reyes, I copy." "We're at the saddle, falling back." Caleb did not answer right away. 5 seconds. 8 seconds. Then, "Copy that. Stay safe." I counted those 8 seconds. I did not mean to. I just did. Both crews came back to base camp around 11 that night. Nobody was seriously hurt. The chow tent was already closed. I got there late and stood at the door for a moment, and Caleb was standing at a picnic table nearby, holding 2 granola bars. He held one out to me. I took it. "Thanks," I said. He did not walk away. We stood at the picnic table, not talking. The generator hummed. Somewhere in the dark, a radio crackled with something I could not make out. He said, "I thought you were on the other side of that ridge." "I'm fine," I said. He looked at me for a moment, and then he said, "Ren, I need to say something to you. Not right now. Not out here. But I won't be able to forgive myself if I don't say it." "Don't," I said. He stopped. "You're married," I said. "You have Iris. Don't." He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Okay." He took his granola bar and walked back toward the crew tents. I went back to my own tent. I did not cry. I lay on my cot and told myself I had done the right thing. I had stopped him before he said something that could not be taken back. I was protecting both of us, and Iris, and whatever was left of his marriage. I had made the correct call. I told myself this several times, carefully, and I almost believed it. And then it was 2 in the morning, and I was sitting outside on an empty cooler at the edge of my tent because I had not slept. The camp was quiet, except for the generator and the occasional click of a radio from the plan's tent, someone on night shift updating the IAP. The sky to the east had a faint orange line where the Copper Creek fire was still burning 9 miles out. It had been there every night since we arrived, that orange line, and I had stopped noticing it, the way you stop noticing any light that is always on. Tonight, I noticed it. Garza walked past on the way to the water buffalo. He stopped and asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. That was the second time I had lied to Garza. On day 10, I kept to my side of the camp. I ate fast and left the chow tent before the Boise crew came in. I was careful about it, without being obvious, which was a skill I had practiced in other situations. I was good at staying on the other side of a room. That evening, a woman from the Boise crew sat down at our table during dinner. Her name was Becca. She was 27, easy to talk to, the kind of person who fills silence without pushing. She talked about the crew, about a trail in the Sawtooths she wanted to hike after the season, about how the food had been better at a camp she worked last summer in Nevada. Then she mentioned Caleb. She did not lower her voice or lean in. She said it the way she said everything, easy and open, like she was reading the weather report. She said, "Caleb's had a hard year. His wife asked for a separation back in April. He only sees Iris 2 weekends a month right now." She kept eating. She was not making a point. It was just information, something she expected everyone at the table already knew, and she moved on to something else 30 seconds later. She started talking about the Sawtooths again. I looked at my MRE. I finished what was on my spoon. Then I said, "Excuse me," and I stood up and walked out of the tent. The night air was cool and smelled like thinning smoke. I stood at the edge of the light coming from the chow tent and tried to line things up in my head. The story was wrong. That did not make anything easier. He still had Iris. He still had divorce lawyer fees he had not finished paying. And he had volunteered for this extra tour, partly because going back to an empty apartment in Boise every morning was something he could not yet make himself do. I stood there for a while, and I did not figure it out. I found him at the far edge of the camp, sitting on a cooler with his elbows on his knees, smoking a Marlboro Red. He had not smoked when we were in school. The smell of the cigarette mixed with the forest ash that had settled into his Nomex over the past 9 days. I sat down about a foot away from him. He did not look surprised to see me. He took another drag and blew the smoke away from me without making a thing of it. I did not say I was sorry for stopping him at the picnic table. I did not say Becca had told me anything. I said, "Tell me about Iris." He looked at me for a moment. Then he started. He said Iris had a lot of dark hair for 8 months. He said she made a small sound when she was falling asleep, like a little engine winding down. He said the last time he had held her was 19 days ago, in the parking lot of a Safeway in Meridian, during a handoff. He said the drive home after that took 40 minutes, and he had not turned on the radio the whole way. Then he told me his wife had said she was not in love with him anymore. He said he did not blame her. He said he had not really been there, not in the way a person needs to be there. For most of the 4 years, they were married. Not because of the tours. It was something harder to explain than that. He had been in the room and somewhere else at the same time, and she had noticed before he did. He said he did not know why he was telling me this. Then he said, "Yes, I do. I'm telling you because you're the only person who ever said that to me, that I wasn't really there when we were together. You said it once, and I didn't understand what you meant. 7 years later, I get it." I did not say anything for a while. The Marlboro Red burned down between his fingers. The camp was quiet, except for the generator. He dropped the cigarette end and pressed it out with his boot heel. Neither of us moved. It was not the kind of moment that becomes a beginning. It was the kind that tells the truth, and the truth had a weight, and we both had to sit with it. There were 4 days left before the 4-day rule brought his tour to a close, and his crew had to demob. 4 days. I did not know yet what I was going to do with them. On the morning of day 12, there was a piece of paper on the cooler outside my tent. His handwriting. One line, Channel 4, tonight, 9 p.m. If you want. I read it. I folded it once. I put it in the chest pocket of my Nomex jacket. I worked the fire line for 16 hours. I did not think about the note while I was working, or I thought about it only in the way you think about something you have already decided to do. At 9 o'clock that night, I walked to the far edge of the camp, where the light from the generator did not reach well, and I switched my radio to Channel 4. He was already there. We talked for 47 minutes. I am not going to write out all of it, because some of it did not have the kind of shape that turns into sentences easily. But I can say what it covered. He asked about the cabin, and I told him the real numbers this time, the 14 seasons, and the $185,000, and the Lolo listing I had saved on my phone. He asked what I would do with it once I had it. I said I had not thought that far. He said, I think you have. I did not answer that. He asked about Iris, and I asked questions, and he answered them. And at some point, his voice went quiet for a moment, and he said she had started reaching for things just before he left, grabbing at whatever was in front of her, and he had left before he could find out what she would reach for next. He asked what he was going to do when his tour ended. He said he did not know. He said he was not going to ask me to wait for him, because that was not fair to me, and it was not something he was ready to promise. I said I did not want to be promised anything. I lay on my cot after, and thought about that last part. I did not want to be chosen right now. I did not want to be the answer to what he was going through. I had spent 4 seasons on Hazel's futon between jobs, telling myself it was about the cabin. Maybe it was. Maybe not entirely. I lay on my cot and let the radio go quiet. We ended the call. I said, "Copy that." He said, "Copy that." The radio went quiet. Hazel had known 7 years ago, when I called and said I was fine. She had let it go. Tonight, I did not call anyone. Day 14. Morning. The Boise crew started loading at 6. I could hear the bus idling from inside my tent, that low diesel sound that meant someone was leaving. I put on my Nomex, clipped my radio, and joined the line of people who stood at the edge of the staging area to shake hands as they left. This was how fire camps worked. Crews that came up together on the same assignment stood at the line when another crew demobbed. It was a fire line thing, not personal. I would have been there for any crew. Caleb walked down the line. He shook hands with Garza, with 2 others on my crew. He stopped when he got to me. He did not hug me. He said, "Take care, Ren." I said, "You too, Caleb." He held my hand for 1 extra second. Then he let go and got on the bus. I stood at the edge of the staging area and watched the bus back out and pull onto the road and go. Garza came to stand beside me after a while. He did not ask if I was okay. He just put his hand on my shoulder for a moment, and then he walked away. I went back to my tent. I reached into my chest pocket and took out the piece of paper. Caleb had left 2 mornings before. One corner had a thin brown line burned into it, just the edge, like it had been close to a heat source at some point. I do not know when. I had been carrying it through 2 shifts on the line, and I had not noticed. I did not throw it away. I did not fold it neatly. I opened my Write in the Rain notebook, the water-resistant one I used to track fire vectors and line conditions, and I slipped the paper inside, between 2 pages of notes I had made during the wind event on day 9. I closed the notebook. Outside the tent, someone on a radio called my name for the 7 o'clock briefing. I could hear the crew leader reading from the IAP on the far side of camp, the flat, steady voice of a person going through the plan for the day. I clipped the radio back to my shoulder. The sun was already burning the haze off the ridge. I had 4 more days on the line.
Please, just take it.
No, stay back.
We need to talk.
There's nothing left to say.
One corner on the note. She'd been carrying it to 2 sips without knowing. I wasn't ready for that detail. Honestly, when she said don't at the picnic table, I felt that. The right call and the hard call at the same time. She knew it too. For more days on the line after he left, no answer yet, just the work. Did that ending feel right to you, or did you need more? Tell me below and I will read them all. Thank you so much for watching.